Good morning, all. Happy Sunday to you, and thank you for joining us. I'm here with Coach and Mr. Evan Veith, who's joining us for the very first time. He is the sports editor at the Daily Texan and an Inside Texas contributor. So, welcome, Evan. Thank you so much for being here. I can see that you've got a ceiling fan on in the background, which will not distract any of our viewers. So that's good to know.
The camera situation's really messed up here. I'm sorry about this, guys.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Coach, you were just telling me you got a chance to go through the rewatch. I'd love to get your initial thoughts.
Oh, man. It was an amusement park roller coaster, Started out smooth and going up the hill, then dropped off the cliff. It was like, oh, what are we doing here? They had some loops, some twists and turns. But in the end, the ride ended very smooth, right? Because it was able to lean on that defense line and just kind of finish the game and take away all the fourth quarter pretty much, running the ball. Not even running different plays. Like, we're just running at you at this time. Counter, trap, power. It was working, right? And able to finish the game. I love to see that because I think everybody's been banging the table saying, I want to see a running game. I want to see us be able to run at people and just, lean on people, right? And to do that versus a defensive line like Kentucky yesterday to end the game was really like something special to see. And so, that's what I thought about the game, man. It was, it kept you on the edge of the seat, especially the second and third quarter.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, I mean, we netted 250 yards on the ground, which is outstanding as far as that is concerned. So Evan, now I know that you sound like you smoke a carton of Marlboro Reds every morning, but you were at the game and that's why your voice is a little off. Is that right?
I had my own senior night. That was my last home game as a fan. And so, I take my fandom seriously when I'm in the stadium. And then after I'll keep myself to be a journalist. But I enjoy the cheering and the the third and Bevos, as they would say, in the stands. So that's why it sounds like I've been a 15-year chain smoker.
So walk us through a little bit. Tell us about your senior night. How was it for you? What was the vibe in the stadium?
Yeah, I was so surprised at how great the turnout was, at least from the alumni side. The the students took a little bit to get into the stadium, but that's, it's the holiday break. But it was very emotional when the players were coming out at those entrances, especially like Jahdae Barron, I think was the one that really got a lot of fans, was the loudest cheer. And obviously Quinn Ewers was just, he's a divided character. I think the students especially really connect with him. For me, I experienced that 2021 season as a fan, my first season being a Texas fan, and just the difference between that Hudson Card, Casey Thompson year and Quinn Ewers was huge for me. So I really just took it all in. I think it's the longest I've ever stayed at the stadium after the game, just because I didn't want to leave. It was going to be my last time at TKR in that section. So I was getting a little emotional even, which is rare for me at a sporting event.
Yeah, it was, it was emotional for me as well, probably for very different reasons. But thankfully, that's why we have Xanax and Lexapro to get through these emotional rides. So, Coach, let's go through this a little bit. Like you said, we rushed the ball 47 times.
Yeah.
Right. Again, when you consider our passing game, our pass attempts were around 31. So this was a run heavy game, considering certainly Sark plays really balanced most of the time, even though it may feel like it's a heavy run or a heavy pass game. He's generally right around the 49-50% range in each play call. So, with that, again, it was a simplicity in the run game, I think, that was surprising for everyone. And let's just talk a little bit. I want to bring this up so you guys can see, because especially in the big play area, on the rushing side, let's just come down here for a second. So a big play, just for the folks playing at home, especially in the rushing area, is anything over 10 yards. And we had 7 of those, 7 big plays for a total of 113 yards. The biggest being 21 yards, and that was the blue run on the outside.
Yeah.
Just curious, Coach, what are you seeing in that run game? What does it portend as we go into the final game of the regular season in College Station?
Just looking at the run game yesterday, I thought Sark uses so many different formations, so many motions. Like, you really have to be key. You really have to key in on your identifier as a defensive player, linebacker up front, or even safety at third level. So you just can't come downhill, because Sark started kind of hitting them with a lot of motion, a lot of crossovers, and so crossing routes. And so they had to kind of be patient. And you started to saw those guys kind of get frustrated. for Kentucky, and then they stopped playing as disciplined. You started seeing lanes wide open where offensive linemen didn't even have a person to block. Like, it was wide open, right? And so Sark just threw so many things at him. I think that their eyes kind of got dirty, is what we call it in coaching. They got dirty eyes, and they didn't understand what they were seeing, what was coming at them. And after that, they got tired, and we just kind of just leaned on them on from that point on. But just those explosive runs, I thought Kentucky just had bad eyes. They didn't read their keys very well. They didn't know what was coming just because Sark threw so much at them throughout the game. And then after that, you kind of just saw just understanding of the run game from our standpoint. We knew who we were attacking on their side, and so it just kind of became dominant at that point. One thing that I always say is fatigue makes cowards of us all, and you kind of saw Kentucky get kind of fatigued. Those guys are hands on their hips, breathing hard. And I saw Kevin Banks say, hey, we got tired too, but it didn't affect us as much, right? We had to just finish the game. So you had a mentality over fatigue. Like, hey, we're going to finish this game. And so that was one thing that stood out as well.
Evan, you've been following Texas now for a while. This season in particular, I think, is very unique in the sense that this is where the expectations have actually met up with the talent. I think we've always had the expectations. That's never really been a problem of our expectations of winning the national championship every year. But now there's some talent to match that. And I'm curious, as someone that's been following this team in your time, what separates this team from some of the other teams you've seen at your time on the 40 acres?
Yeah, well, I will say that separation of the expectations and the talent, it almost was the opposite last year, where in 2023, Texas had, I think the number was 10 players drafted. And by the time that it was finished, people were saying, well, Blake player was kind of getting carried by Worthy, Whittington, and they were still only not a preseason top 10 ranked team. Whereas this year, yeah, it feels like this is a top 5 talent. They're being ranked as a top 5 team in the CFP, in the preseason, things like that. I think where you see the biggest difference is in the secondary. I think it's impossible to ignore what Jahdae Barron's been doing. This was even kind of an off game for him, for a guy who's kind of gunning for the Thorpe, but Makuba, that pick that he had was absurd. I saw someone on Twitter make this point. Jelani McDonald's probably the 5th or 6th most talented player on the secondary, and he had one of the most impressive picks I've seen in a Texas uniform. That was just a great play that he had out there, and he's someone that I'm probably irrationally high on. I think his ceiling with his athletic profile is just so high as the year goes on and going into next year. But I just think this team is able to clamp up on receivers. Brown and Key for Kentucky are probably the 2 best players on offense, and they were kind of non-factors. They had a few explosives that I think Texas is going to look at in the film room. But apart from that, I didn't see a single receiver dominate the game and really take over.
For the big passing plays, and again, those are passing plays over 15 yards. Both Texas and Kentucky had 6. Now, Kentucky gained 167 yards on those passing plays, 2 of them for over 40 yards, which is not something we've seen from this secondary. And I think you could argue on the look back there, they seem to me, at least, Coach, those were some very rare busted coverages from that secondary. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, for the first time, I saw a little bit of miscommunication, or kind of just, I would say with Jahdae, he got kind of greedy, like peeking inside a little bit, like, because he wants to make a play. He's like, I'm going to go steal this Thorpe Award, right? And the guy kind of ran by him in cover 3. The other 2, honestly, I saw miscommunication, right, between Jelani McDonald and Manny Muhammad, who was going to take who. The other one was cover 3. Manny kind of got his eyes stuck in the backfield, didn't see the deep crosser coming across, right? So you got deep third, you got to get back, but he just didn't read it, right? Because most people haven't been able to even get the ball off 3 or 4 seconds and hold on to the ball that long. And so he got kind of caught just looking in the backfield, and the deep crosser kind of got open. So little things like that just happen when you don't expect it, right? Because you've been so good all year. You haven't really had to cover that long. And I think sometimes it's like, it's just a reminder, hey, don't get caught peeking in the backfield. Still do your job, right? And for the most part, they did that, but just minor miscues yesterday.
And as a coach, how are we fixing those? Is that just a couple conversations, maybe a little heated in the film room? Or how?
Yeah, definitely. Just the film room. Like, hey, what were you seeing here? What were you thinking? First, you want to understand the mind and what the kid is thinking, right? It's like, okay, this is what you're thinking. Great. Well, you can't do that because you want to know if he knew he made the mistake and what mistake he actually made. That way you know how to correct it and coach it. But for the most part, like I said, you got to a season full of film of him doing it right. Hey, just can't get back to the fundamentals, right? Let's do our job. Let's not focus on doing everybody else's job and trying to do certain things. Let's just do our job, right? Just kind of a refocus thing, honestly.
What is what's the sense on campus, Evan? I mean, how, we here deal with the internet, which is generally a very rational place to have conversations. I'm just curious what it's like on campus. What's the feeling on campus this season?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit more, kind of going back to your first point about the expectations versus talent. There's a little bit more expectation of like this has to be a team that has to blow out teams that aren't, 8-2 or Georgia level. That's just not how college football works. I think people were a little upset about the Arkansas game. I've got group chats and I'm in with students. I'm hearing the people buzzing around on campus. And I don't think a 10 or a winning by 10 in Arkansas is a bad win. Maybe the committee might see it that way, but it seems like a little more nuance to take for the fans is that Texas has to be beating teams by a lot more than they are. And that just goes to show how far Texas has come. But I think it's a little bit almost privileged. Like, hey, this Texas team, we're top 3. We have to be beating all these teams really aggressively. And you can't have anything that's going on against Kentucky be a problem. Go watch other teams. Go watch what Georgia was doing against UMass in that first half. This is just how college football works. These aren't professional players yet. And I think fans are just like, I think I'm going back to that word, a little too privileged with this team that they've got constructed. But everyone is really happy with what Sark's been doing. I think even though Quinn Ewers is again, a polarizing figure for fans, I think generally the students, especially the ones who have been here for a while, are appreciative of what he's been doing and think he is the QB1 of this team going forward, which he will be.
Coach and I are of a certain vintage where we remember those Mac Brown 10-win seasons, and we did admittedly took it for granted. I mean, it was one of those things you just assumed it was so consistent that everybody just, they took it for granted. And, going to the chat here, and I want to give some thanks to Patrick Page for checking in on us. But yeah, I mean, look, we are 10-1. What a day to be alive, right? We're coming into this thing. We're actually going to be playing some meaningful football the day after Thanksgiving. And let's talk about that a little bit. This is how meaningful it is, y'all. Georgia is in the SEC championship game. That is decided. They are going in as a second seed. The winner of Texas and Texas A&M will punch their ticket to that game. This could not have higher stakes. This means everything, not only in the state of Texas, but in the SEC writ large. And I am very excited about it. It's a great time to be a Texas fan. It's fun to have things mean things now, where it's not just, hey, can we beat this one team and then hang our hat on one victory? Now we're actually playing games that matter. And I'm curious, Coach, what we can transfer now over a little bit to talking about A&M. What are some things just at that 30,000 foot view? What are some things about A&M that scare you?
Their ability to actually get pressure on the quarterback scares me. When they're really locked in and focused and playing with detail, they can be really good, especially that front four. And they just bring so many different looks and pressures on defense that, hey, if we don't have a healthy quarterback who can move on one leg, how can he avoid that rush, right? So that scares me from a 30,000 foot view. Other than that, it's just the ability of Marcel Reed to make off-script plays. We saw the quarterback from Kentucky yesterday kind of really – I'm not saying you game plan against him because you know he was going to play, but he was able to kind of get outside the pocket and make a couple throws. Well, Marcel Reed can do the exact same thing, right? Most people look at it, we stopped a lot of dual threat quarterbacks, but Marcel can actually throw off the run, just like the Kentucky quarterback could yesterday. So there's just a few things, honestly, and then their special teams, because they have great special teams. They have great ball position, field position. They do great job at field position, which we don't. That concerns me because special teams has been a kind of a sore thumb, so to speak, this year, and they do a great job with field position. So that kind of worries me a little bit.
Any thoughts from you, Evan, on that?
Yeah, I agree completely on, especially the special teams point, which I'd love to talk about later in this episode with Coach about that. I do think that pass rush is what scares me the most. The two Shamars and Nick Scouton, 3 players that are going to be playing in the NFL next year, and they are going to have all that Big 12 12th man crowd behind them. We're not in the Big 12 anymore. During this game, I think the run defense for Texas A&M is something that doesn't get talked about enough. They've got those big bodies. That's something that Coach Elko really prioritizes. And I think Texas has to show that they can do what they did in that fourth quarter again. As always, to open up the pass game, which Texas didn't need to do in that drive. 15 straight runs. And then, like you said, Marcel Reed off script. I do think Amari Daniels is starting to become a little underrated. It's unfortunate that Le'Veon Moss went down for A&M, but this Amari Daniels guy has been really cooking this last few weeks. I think last like 3 weeks, he's been one of their best performers. And I'd love to know, Coach, what you think about his run game, because he's not quite the big bruising back that they thought they would have when both of their top guys went down, but he seems much more elusive and just seems to be kind of doing the little things that you hope a running back does, getting those extra 1-2 yards that is making the A&M offense more successful.
Yeah, look, he's a smaller back. Sometimes he kind of hides behind the line. You really can't see him. You ever see those little guys? I'm not saying he's not Deuce Vaughn little, but he's a smaller guy, kind of hides behind the line. Then he squirts out of nowhere. It's like, man, where'd he go? How do you even get through that? But he runs extremely hard. He has pretty good balance. So he doesn't go down very easy, but he hides behind that big offensive line. He kind of squirts through. But we saw him last night run through some people. But he runs extremely hard. So he's gonna be a guy we kind of watch, because if you give him a crease, he can hit it. And he has a home run threat ability to take off and go the distance. But I think he's a volume runner. He gets better as he goes. And the more confidence and more steadiness of the run game, they trust him, especially if you kind of watch Marcel Reed, right, a little bit. He can hit the crease and kind of hurt you, but he's a volume runner. So I think over time he gets better and better throughout the game versus early on.
I want to bring something up, and this is for our friend C. Gaddis, who's here a lot, and we do appreciate that. So C. Gaddis is saying LC got mad at me early in the season for saying this was a down year for the field. Each team has its flaws, and the playoffs is a perfect format for this season in particular. I don't get mad at anybody, C. Gaddis. I don't. If I made you feel that way, I'm really sorry. But the truth of the matter is you and I were probably saying the same thing. The SEC sure is probably in a down year, but I think the parity of it is what makes it so good. Now, I disagree with Greg Sankey in saying that it's a parity issue, and maybe you were right, C. Gaddis, that this is just a down year. But I think when we start to narrow the rosters get smaller, the transfer portal opens up, NIL gets codified. I think more parity is going to happen. I don't think it's actually going to get any weaker in that regard. But I your point is well taken. I definitely think that this year is a great year for the playoff. But as Justin has pointed out time and time again, there will still be teams upset. And you know what? If Texas doesn't win next weekend, they very well could be one of those teams that's upset. And I think that is the truth of the matter as we go through all of this, is that there is a lot of uncertainty if a loss happens in the game next week. And that's why Texas, this is a must win. There's no two ways about it. We talked about it at the roundtable on Friday. The playoffs started this last weekend against Kentucky. We are in a one and done situation. We have to win every game that we're playing. Let's talk a little bit. Coach, did you get a chance to watch any of the other games this weekend?
I watched a little bit, especially the later games, right? So of course I watched. My eyes were glued to Alabama and Oklahoma, and then Auburn and A&M, right? I watched those two games mainly yesterday because I was kind of out. But what exciting games! Was not expecting. I don't know what happened in Norman, but my God, that was strange to see, right? I think for a lot of people it was shocked, and then those guys stormed the field. Okay. I think Eric mentioned that kind of lessens the rivalry a little bit. Come on, what are we doing, man? Storming the field, really?
Well, I have the great privilege of being on an OU text chat just because I graduated from high school in Oklahoma, and one of the guys put in there that Oklahoma is the Temu Alabama, which I thought was really great. It's the low rent Alabama. It's good. They understand what they've got going on over there, which I think is really really great.
I'll give them that environment. Maybe it was just Tony Romo being there on the sideline. They were after that Billy or I was either Bowman or Bowen, one of the BOWs. Whichever one of them had that great pick. That place was rocking. I guess the Temu the products came in. They got their soundboards or whatever.
Let's again, a lot of people are justifiably, look, this entire week is going to be dedicated to A&M, so I have no problem focusing on that. But let's talk a little bit about the Texas defense. They have been they've just been balling all week or all year. And I think it's a really amazing thing to look at. So let's just look at some of just the cumulatives going in here. We held, in spite of those big plays we talked about, I want to focus on this. The average rush yard for Kentucky was under a yard.
Yeah.
I want that to sink in a little bit, because look at these big plays. You come over to the big plays, they had 3 runs rather for over 10 yards and 40 yards gained rushing, yet their average was still under 1 yard. That is a pretty dominant performance, Coach.
Yeah, definitely is. I know you probably may add in some of the sacks into those rush yards, because they got a ton especially towards the end. But for the most part, like, this defense is just playing, and they've done it all year. They just play together. It's team defense. They cover for each other. You may see a guy get in the wrong gap. In years past, the linebacker would take the wrong gap with the defensive lineman, but they're covering for each other. Defensive lineman takes the B gap, linebacker takes the C gap. Like, it's just playing on a string and playing together. You can tell they watch film together. They trust one another. They love each other, and they're playing defense like that. I'm not calling them the 2000 Baltimore Ravens, but I'm saying they play in jail together on and off the field. You can kind of tell everything translate from off the field practice to the games, right? And these guys love each other, and they're playing like that. And they're playing with their hair on fire, man. They're just flying to the football, making plays. They're excited. This is week 14 into the season, and they're playing like they're fresh, like it's week 1 still, right? And so when you see that, you see the passion and love for the game translate to the field and the way they're playing, man. I think that's why you get results like this.
Evan, can you talk a little bit about being around the team this year? What have you noticed just in terms of the, let's be honest, what are the vibes?
What are the vibes? That's a great question. I think, obviously, I want to reference when you talk about vibes, the last year's team, because it felt like that Jay Witt, that Xavier Worthy, that Adonai Mitchell, it was almost the receiver group that was really upholding that culture that Steve Sarkisian was really pointing out. I think now it's these back half players. It's Anthony Hill, it's David Benda, it's Jahdae Barron, Michael Taff, Mookie Monday, we like to call it, because he's always such a great personality when you do those Monday availabilities. It seems like that back half, apart from the communication errors in the passing game, a little bit like you said with Muhammad and McDonald, it seems like they're really communicating at the highest level they've ever been at the University of Texas. I feel like this team is just understanding where they need to be. What really struck me was that when those few rushes, I think when I looked at it, the pure rushing yards that per attempt was about 3.7, 3.8, which is still fantastic.
Right.
And the ones where they were beating Texas, where Kentucky was getting the runs, getting those 10-yard chip runs, it felt like that Kentucky was blocking well. At the end of the day, Kentucky is an SEC team. They're recruiting and getting transfer portal players that are 4 stars, that are really solid players. And I didn't think there were times where Texas was missing assignments, where they were hitting the wrong gap, or the linebackers were doing the wrong thing. There were times where I just felt like the pulling guard got to Trey Moore before Moore could get his hand on the guy, and suddenly it's an 8-yard gain. So I think it's really helping that. And then obviously everyone loves this pass rush. How could you not love the pass rush of this team after this game? I'd love to hear Coach's thoughts on Colin Simmons specifically, because I think he had 6 pressures on the game, 2 sacks. Hill had a great stat line. Sorrell had a great stat line. Moore is really coming into his own. And I think that's probably the group that's really been as advertised, I guess would be the word I'm looking for. We thought it would be better coming in. It was said that Moore and Simmons were going to revolutionize it. And I think as we've hit week 14, that's what's happened.
Yeah, look, looking at defense line, you never know who's going to make the play, right? That's what's so special. Any given rep, play, series, one can take over. It's Colin Simmons, it's Trey Moore, Alfred Collins, Barron Sorrell, Ethan Burke. Like, you just never know. Jermaine Olay, like, he even stepped up yesterday again. It's like, okay, like, those guys, they just want it. I call it heart and just attitude, man. You just want it more than the other guy. And they're just performing. We knew Colin Simmons, what he was coming in. You never expect a freshman to take over like he's doing, but we knew he was special, right? And off the edge, his quick first step. But he has a plan every time he rushes the passer. It's not, I'm just rushing blindly, I'm just going to do this move. Like, he actually sets guys up. At a young age, that's very, very impressive. I think Barron Sorrell has even stepped up his pass rush game. He's always been a solid run-stopping defensive end, always assignment sound. But now you see the pass rush and see the counter moves. It's like, okay, Barron. Trey Moore, he was brought in to do this, right? And everybody was like, oh, he's not getting sacked at the beginning of the season, but he was fundamentally sound. Now that he's turned that switch on, it's like, who do you focus on the D-line to stop? Like, okay, we got to slow this guy down. Who do you focus on? Because any given moment, anybody can take over. And that's just the beauty of it, man. I love to see it.
I think the other thing too, that, and one of the things that doesn't get maybe the recognition that it deserves, because it's a little bit hard to see and maybe a little bit boring, is just the discipline on that defensive line. They're holding the edge. They're not playing hero ball. They're doing their job. And I think when we talked, one of the big things coming into this season was the cohesion between the front and the back half of the defense, right? Can we actually get those two lined up properly and working in cohesion? And this to me is the result of that. When you want to see a defense where the line is working with the secondary and allowing those linebackers to raise a little hell, I think you're seeing the fruits of that. And some of that's Nansen, some of that's PK. Obviously, we've got the defensive line coaches are killing it. So it's a really great opportunity to see what this can look like and should be the metric moving forward on what is a successful and cohesive defense. One of the questions that guys, before we get to, you guys have some great stuff going on in the chat, and I want to get to that. But before we do, I would love to hear from our sponsor. So if any of you out there are driving an 18-wheeler, I want you to listen to this.
This video is brought to you by Andre the Lawyer. If you're injured, trust the team that secured millions for their clients and helped thousands of Texans with their injury case. Car wrecks, slip and falls, 18-wheeler accidents, on-the-job injuries, and wrongful deaths. Don't let insurance tell you what your claim is worth. Hire Andre the Lawyer to fight for you. Principal office is in Dallas, but they serve Texans throughout the state. So don't wait and call Andre the Lawyer today at 214-444-8808. That's 214-444-8808. The contact information is in the description.
All right, boys, this is a personal question. Now, I know, Evan, you're not an indigenous Texas person, so this might be a little bit of manufacturing, but I hope you feel it by now. Do you have a specific hatred? Do you hate OU more than A&M? Where does your hate really lie, Evan?
I think if we're talking about pure hate, it has to be OU for me, because that's what I came into. It really is hard as someone, I grew up a Michigan fan, actually, which is, I think some people might know this about me. So my original hate growing up was Ohio State. That was the team that rivalry weekend came around. That's what I was thinking about. And, the rivalry ended when I was 8 years old. So I didn't even really have a chance to understand it. So that's how young we are in college these days. So I enter college, and I knew about Texas. I wanted to be a fan as soon as I committed to the school. But
nice.
That first year, I get Caleb Williams, and I'm just like, wow, I hate this guy's guts. This is the worst person. He's from DC, and he did that to the school I was going to. This is terrible. And then I went to my first Cotton Bowl game as a sophomore, and ever since it's just been, I couldn't get away from OU being the team I hate most. But I will say, when it comes to individual run-ins, A&M has some of the most awful fans about just trash talking about nothing. It's not about like a game that's been won. They might have beat us in volleyball. You can try talking about that. It's just the most random stuff that I just could not care about.
Coach, do you have a strong feeling one way or the other on this?
It used to be, it was equal hatred, honestly, growing up. Honestly, and then the Bob Stoops, Mac Brown era made me hate OU a little more, because getting blown out, it's just something about it. I hated OU, right? And I used to, whenever A&M and OU would play each other, I was like, man, who do I really want to win, right? But I always wanted A&M to get our leg back for OU beating us. But this rivalry has just so much. It's different. It's different, especially with being gone for so many years. Now it's back. All the trash talk on and off the field, and different sports going back and forth. I'm really looking forward to seeing this. It's not so much hate. It's just so much like, I want to get in the ring with this guy type of feeling, right? I can't wait to get in the ring with this guy and just inflict some pain on him, just to show them that you are a little brother and you belong here. And we are here. Let's get it understood where it's at. It's not hate. It's about putting people in their place and getting the respect that we deserve, that we're the big brother and, you're a little brother. That's pretty much what it is.
Like I said, I moved to Oklahoma my freshman year in high school. So it's not like I was spent a lifetime there, and I got out of Oklahoma as quick as I could. But there's definitely a sense of a personal feeling when it comes to OU, but the thing about A&M that to me is just so unique is the atmosphere amongst the families in Texas, those that have the quote house divided, the people that really feel passionately one way or the other about this. And I think two things are true about both of those teams. I think college football is much better when OU is good, and I think college football is superior when Texas plays Texas A&M. And I think those are two factors that I'm so happy that we have now in our universe that we can move forward with. I'm glad we've got young people like Evan who can start to experience just some of the total ineptitude that you're going to hear from that side of the house. And it's going to be a really, really nice time. So one of the questions that came up, because this is a player not unlike Quinn, who has been sometimes maligned in a very different way, and that's Sydir Mitchell. And he's starting to get some reps, Coach. So I want to talk a little bit about Sydir. He's making his reps. He got his reps yesterday. This is from Patrick Page. If you guys are still on defense, Sydir Mitchell making the most of his reps yesterday, and the entire defensive front coming to show him love for blowing up that UK play, that Kentucky play in the second quarter. I'm glad that you pointed this out, Patrick, because as Drew Kelson was talking about in one of our lives, I believe it was last week, Sydir Mitchell's ceiling is entirely up to Sydir Mitchell. Does he stay in the program? Because the program has clearly not quit on him. They are there for him. I believe this entire year. I think this is going to be a make or break year for him, not necessarily in terms of reps or even talent, but him understanding the growth that is needed and what a development actually looks like. But again, I love that he's getting this love. I know, Coach, you're someone that's been very positive on Sydir, at least just in terms of his skill set. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I love Sydir. I've always been waiting for the light bulb to come on, him get opportunities. What he's doing when he does get opportunities is what I thought he could do, right? I'm glad that the coaching staff actually stuck by his side, but he put in the work to actually stay here as well, right? Show that you want to be here, right? And then we'll pour into you and give you opportunities. And you kind of see a little opportunities coming these last few games. He's gotten a chance to get in and show himself. And so I think this is going to be such a positive reinforcement. Like, look, you're earning this, right? Maybe he works even harder now to earn even more playing time and show what he can do. But Sydir, man, he's a big body. He's hard to move. And when he's super motivated,
it's a large man.
He's going to make plays like this and blow up and hold gaps. And so he's everything we thought he could be. Like, he's showing it in spurts and in flashes. But I think the more opportunity he gets, the more opportunity he earns. Let me not say get. The more opportunity he earns, I think he'll show more of the dominance that he can be and what he was brought in for. And I think this is kind of transition and kind of skyrocket him into the offseason, right? Like, hey, I got opportunities. I showed him what I could do. And he's going to feel good about himself because he's earning it, right? You kind of feel different when you earn something. And you want to work even harder. And I think that's going to transition him to the guy we thought he could be coming out of high school. So I'm excited to see how he grows from this. But I'm glad he's in the game now and doing what he does.
Make no mistake about it. Sydir Mitchell is a need on this team. The cupboard is not as full as we would want it to be after this season. We need Sydir to make that leap. So I think the coaches are very smart in investing in him, but I think it's also a demonstration of the culture that Sark has cultivated there. That, look, we're not going to give up on you. Let's not forget, Jay Witt was going to quit football. I mean, when you consider what that man did for this university and the fact that Sark and Whittington had that conversation and came back to play, Sark is not somebody that's going to just quit on you straight out of the gate. So I think that's a really important thing. So, Coach, you do have a question here from our patron saint, Ryan Nelson. He says, Coach, how is portal recruiting going to work for the playoff teams? And this is a great question, Ryan, because we've been talking about the schedule. Obviously, we've got December 4th coming up. That is obviously a massive day for signing, but we've also got the championship games, which are on December 7th. So it is a very tight schedule for these folks. Coach, what are your thoughts on this? Do you have any insight into this? This one's a little bit tricky.
Yeah, no. Look, recruiting never stops. High school, portal, JUCO, it never stops. Every team is looking for looking at next year's team on what they may need to replace. They kind of know who they're gonna. Hey, you should go into the portal, or who they're expecting to go into the portal, right? So you got to have replacements. So recruiting never stops. That support staff, that recruiting staff at Texas, they're on PFF. They're watching film of all the kids who may go who are already in the transfer portal, and then they have a database and a list, right? And these coaches have been looking at this film and scouting it all season. They're just being honest. And so then you get the new names that are going to go in the portal. It's the same process. You're just going to go to PFF, watch all of his film, see if he's a need and a fit, do your evaluation, start doing your research and say, hey, this kid's in the portal. We can talk about him. Let's find out everything we can. And then you recruit him like you're recruiting a high school kid, right? As soon as he's in the portal, it's allowed for you to recruit him and talk to him and all those things. You do so. So you got all your homework done on him. You know how he can play, what he can do, how he can help your team. Now you just got to find out the mental evaluation part and find out what you know about the kid. And so, yeah, it works just like every other team. You're in the playoffs, but you can still recruit just like you're recruiting a high school kid, honestly. And it never stops, and it's been going on since August, honestly. So this is nothing new. This is routine.
Evan, this we talked about a little bit earlier. This was also your senior night. Congratulations. I'm curious, and I'd love to just get both of your opinions on this, but I'll start with you, Evan. Of the seniors that are leaving, which one has kind of made the most impact on you and your experience at Texas?
Yeah, I think the first one is Jahdae Barron, just because he's the exemplary of the culture that Sarkisian's put in. He's played 4 different positions at Texas, depending on what you call safeties, 3 to 4 different positions, and he's just been adaptable. He's been coachable. He's been someone that's been in the media in a positive way every single time he gets a mic taped to him. So he's just a great guy. And also Gunnar Helm is someone that I'm personally going to miss a lot. He was a player that last year when I was covering the team for the Daily Texan, I would tweet about a lot. It was almost like a bit with Gunnar Helm because I was so high on his game, and people were just kind of like, this is just a blocking tight end. This is someone who is just there to help out. I'm like, are you seeing what he does those few times he gets the ball in his hands? He has that fit in the mold of an NFL tight end. That's why he's getting this this hype. His parents are very active on Twitter. They like my tweets as well. So I just think those 2 players are ones where it's going to feel weird watching Texas without them next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Coach, anybody out there? And I think we should also throw in, neither Cam nor Kelvin walked yesterday. I understand that they're not true seniors, but what are your thoughts on this, Coach?
I was going to actually say that because I was trying to see who walked. I didn't see Makuba walk either, right? Maybe I missed it. But looking at that, like, okay. But I'm sure Kelvin Banks is gone. You guys, for top 5 pick. He kind of stole mine with Gunnar Helm, though. I'm president of the Gunnar Helm fan club. Sorry there. All year, I felt like Gunnar could be exactly what he is now. People gave me a little flack. I thought he was a better overall tight end than JT Sanders. That was just me. And a few other people that I know, like, Gunnar Helm has a chance to really be that guy. Overall, he can block, he can run, he can catch. And now we know he can moss people too, right? So Gunnar Helm was my guy. But I'm also just happy to see people like David Benda, right, who's been up and down the depth chart, playing here sparingly, a little bit of special teams. To see him kind of just take off this season, especially early on, man, it was good to see him get so much playing time and earn the trust of coaches. But yeah, it's so many guys, man. So many guys who've been here, from 2021 season, right? You're just happy to see those guys be on a winning team. Well, they won last year, but consistency of that, of where the program was when they first got here. I'm just so happy for every single one of those senior guys, man. It's just special to see.
What now? Again, I was unfortunately didn't get to see the walk either, but I did. Am I right in saying that Taff went out there as well?
He did, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's one of the guys that also sticks out. And this is more me yes-anding everything you guys are saying. I think, there's a player that, I mean, I have to say some of those tackles last night, it looked like Taff was literally stood straight up when he hit them. It was just like creating a wall he was bouncing off people. It was kind of crazy, but I've really enjoyed watching him, primarily just because of all the internet. I don't want to call it hate, but there was definitely a lot of doubt. And look, there's a guy that consistently earned his place on the field, especially when you look in that secondary room. So there's undeniable that he deserves to be there. And I was just really happy that he got to do that as well. So we are about to go into yet another hate week. This is a full week over at Inside Texas, and we would love if you would join us over there. Be sure to like and subscribe to this. I know we've got a lot of people over there on Twitter. Please just jump on over here and like and subscribe. It really does help us out. As I've said this before, we are trying to buy Ian Boyd a minivan. So if we could just get any little help, that gives us a big bump. And also check us out at InsideTexas.com. We've got Evan over there riding with us now. Coach is certainly helping us out over there on the recruiting trail and breaking down some X's and O's for us. This is the week to join us. So please join us at InsideTexas.com. It is a make or break week for Texas. This is a win and in and lose. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? So let's hope it is something that we all can be really, really proud of. So join us tomorrow morning. We're going to have our live with Texas Homer, and that's going to carry on all the way to Thursday. You'll have your morning lives. We'll have our evening lives on Monday and Wednesday, and all the deep dives and inside the program content that makes us Inside Texas. We really appreciate you joining us today, and we'll see you this week. Hook 'em, everybody.